in addition to having a small NGO, I also teach as a visiting professor at the Central European University, and my main course there is on political warfare. And political warfare, sometimes it is dubbed by information warfare or hybrid warfare, the term that I actively dislike. But this political warfare, it's a gray zone between peace and conventional war. And there's a huge gray area where everything is allowed, and as Alexei Reznikov already mentioned, everything can be weaponized, everything. So Russia has been waging a political war against Europe, against the West for many years now. The framework of political war can also provide for various escalatory steps. Now, if one step does not work, so for example, weaponization of soft power, if that doesn't work, a country, in our case, Russia, can step up and do something, more. Just, going up, and up. The invasion of Ukraine in 2014 was Russia's admitting the defeat of its political war. Yeah? So for Russia, they realized that neither attempts to corrupt Ukrainian politicians, nor having pro-Russian parties in Ukraine, nor many other tools of political warfare that they used, they all failed. And hence they have to invade Ukraine, annex Crimea, start the war in the Donbass. Then there was this period of almost, from 2014, 8 years, when they thought that maybe some other forms, they de-escalated a little bit. They tried to use the methods and instruments of political warfare against Ukraine again, and that didn't work. Hence the invasion, the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022. And if you look at beyond Ukraine, if you look at the situation beyond Ukraine and adopt this sort of the perspective of political warfare and how Russia does this, you will see that it's peace, yeah, with a particular country. Then if there is some sort of a crisis in the relations between Russia and another country, Russia would try to buy politicians, to use lobbying as a form of influence. If that doesn't work, then this whole methodology of political warfare comes in, and then it's the conventional war. Ukraine would never have happened if the West had reacted to the Russian invasion in Georgia. The Georgia would not have happened if the West had reacted to the occupation of Moldova. It's these steps, it's escalatory steps. We need to start from Moldova and the military occupation of Moldova, especially in particular Transnistrian region, in the very beginning of the 90s. And yet, during the 90s, Russia was accepted as a normal partner of the West, which was a huge mistake. Andreas rightly said that there are documents, there are agreements for the withdrawal of the Russian troops from Moldova, from Transnistria, and that was not enforced. So Moldova happened, no reaction. Georgia happened, no reaction. And then Ukraine happened because the West had not reacted. So if you look at this logic, so the escalation, no reaction from the West, no real response from the West, and Russia's manipulation. Russia manipulates all the time. Georgia happened in 2008. And what happened in 2009? Obama came to power in the White House, and Russia's manipulation, it's a brilliant tactic. Oh, let's have a reset. Let's just, leave everything behind. Well, what was left behind was the occupation of Transnistria, the occupation of Georgia, but let's have a reset. Yeah, let's start anew. And that was Russia invading something and then solidifying the gains and then going further. So now, the logic, if we accept this logic, if Ukraine happens for Russia, which means the destruction of the Ukrainian state, and then, as Olesa said, the idea is to have Ukrainians fighting together with Russians against Europe, against the rest of Europe, against the European Union. And just imagine, there were already reports, and I'm sure this is true, that if Russia wins, it will emerge from this war much stronger than it used to be, because now the new techniques that they learn, the new methods, the new technology that they have. And then even, I mean, if Ukraine loses this war, the Ukrainian army is already, if we don't take the Russian army, Ukrainian army is already the strongest army in Europe. So you will have a combination of two strongest army on this continent, at least on this European part of Eurasia. And that would be a very logical continuation of this escalation. Moldova first, Georgia then Ukraine, and then something else. Poland, the Baltic states, you name it, or something else. And this probably is still not in the minds of Western politicians, this logic of escalation, how they behave. And Andreas and I, we know each other for a very long time, and we remember that, in 2008, Russian ultranationalists, Russian imperialists already wrote, if we don't get Georgia, we should forget about Crimea. In 2008, they were writing, Alexander Dugin was writing about it. So if we don't occupy, if we don't invade Georgia, we'll forget about Ukraine. This is why we need to go there. So the logic now, if they lose Ukraine to the West, then they should forget about other countries. And the ultimate aim is, of course, the destruction of NATO, is the destruction of the European Union. So Russia would be able to cooperate with European states, or West European states, on the bilateral level. This is the only way for Russia to have an upper hand. So, but this does not happen, this huge influence of Russia, domination in some ways, over the EU, or what is left of the EU in the future. It does not happen as long as Ukraine stands. And this is the very important thing. If Ukraine falls, then other countries will follow to get under the Russian submission. But as long as Ukraine stands. So now what is important is not just for Ukraine to stand, and that was the logic over more than 2 years now, but to have a victory or something that would be considered by Russia as Ukraine's victory. Because in this sense, Russia would not go further. The definitions of those of the victory and Russia's defeat can be, multiple. But we need to move away, shift away from the idea that Ukraine should not just, lose this war. Because, and honestly, I'm one of those probably very few people who see in the forthcoming Trump presidency some sort of a chance. Because the full-scale invasion, the response from the West started that we need to give support to Ukraine. Now then the idea of not letting Ukraine lose appeared, while we advanced a narrative of let Ukraine win the war. But the West, and especially the United States under Biden, for whom I'm sure Ukraine is grateful, but the narrative of not letting Ukraine lose the war, and that guided the de-escalation rhetoric and also practices of the Biden administration, they didn't help. Ukraine is losing the war, let's be honest with each other. It is losing the war. So the whole approach of the de-escalation and not letting Ukraine lose the war actually led to Ukraine losing the war. And although, of course, with Donald Trump, we are in the unknown, but I believe that there is a chance that he and his vice president will be briefed by the NSA, by the CIA. They will be, they will catch up with the developments that happened from 2020 to 2024, that they will understand probably that even if they consider China to be the main competitor of the US, it is not in the American interest to have China strengthened by victorious Russia. So even if if this Ukraine crisis is not very important for them, but let's then talk about China. So this is very important now to frame all the explanations and interpretations why Russia needs to have a defeat. Yeah? We can talk about, again, how this can be defined, this defeat. It's not that Ukrainian soldiers are marching on the Red Square, although I would love to see that happening. But just some sort of defeat that will stop Russia from going forward. I'll stop here.
Yeah.